Hello toy fans and welcome to the very first Analog Toys Q&A video. Thank you to every single one of you who sent in your questions and we hope we answer them to your satisfaction. So without further ado, let's get started. So who would I cast as Action Man in an upcoming film? Well, my first response to this question is there shouldn't be an Action Man film. The Action Man that I grew up with, he was an everyman. He was what any child wanted him to be. So you got your Action Man, and it was a very personal toy. It was something that every kid sort of imbued him with whichever character he wanted him to be. And from there you would go out and you would select the uniforms you wanted, you would customize them and swap pieces around. So I just don't see how that would translate to a Hollywood movie. He needs to be some kind of a specific character for Hollywood to make a movie out of him. So my initial reaction is, hey, don't make an Action Man movie. Don't ruin the franchise. Don't make a movie. But if you take away the vintage Action Man that I grew up with, the Palitoy Action Man, and look more at the 90s Action Man, that obviously it had a cartoon series, and he was a specific character in that sort of that mythology, the Hasbro 1990s Action Man. So in that case, sort of just looking at the way the character appeared in the cartoon and on the box art, I would have to say the actor to play him would be John Hamm. I've just got one thing to say. If Hasbro and whatever the Hollywood studio is that, I think Hasbro make their own movies now, a little bit like Marvel. If Hasbro was going to make a Snake Eyes movie, please, for Christ's sake, don't let him talk. Will I ever do a video on either the Kenner Superpowers range or Mattel's Secret Wars? This is a very interesting question, actually. So one video that I would love to do is I'd love to do a video review or maybe even a Toy Histories episode on Kenner's Superpowers, because I think that line is absolutely fantastic. It's probably the best 80s superheroes line around, probably the second best superheroes line after MEGO. However, I didn't have any of the Kenner Superpowers when I was growing up as a kid. And even today, I only have two of them in my collection. I have a really nice original Kenner Superpowers Batman and a Kenner Superpowers Joker. So that's the video that I would like to make. I obviously need to get more of the toys. I can't make a video with just 2, 3 or 4.5-inch action figures. But weirdly enough, I didn't have any of them when I was a kid. I didn't even know about them. What I did have was Mattel Secret Wars, and I had quite a lot of them. I had Captain America, I loved Wolverine, I had Spider-Man, Doctor Doom was probably one of my favorites, Dr. Octopus. But looking back on them now, I actually find them kind of cheaply made toys, not something I'm particularly interested in or something I want to collect. So I don't have any of them anymore. I don't have any of my childhood Mattel Secret Wars action figures. Don't really see me collecting any, so it's unlikely I'm going to make a Mattel Secret Wars video. But Kenner Superpowers, I've got a lot more toys to collect before I can make a video, but that is one that I would certainly love to bring to you guys. What do I think will be in the new range of Action Man figures due to be released later this year? I have no idea. I didn't even know they were releasing new Action Man figures later this year. So I know they did a 50th anniversary release a couple of years ago. I was actually in the United Kingdom. I went to Hamley's toy shop in London and viewed a few of these toys. But I didn't think this was a continuing thing. I've seen a couple of the new Action Man products online that are aimed at the British youth. And I think they're absolutely dreadful. I mean, one of the key innovations they did with Action Man, from his original release to then the flocked-haired version, then came the gripping hands version. And the key thing was that a lot of the Palitoy marketing department was setting these toys up on display at the annual toy fairs and they were finding it very, very difficult to pose Action Man with his rifles and pistols and other accessories. So they came up with Action Man's gripping hand, sculpted by Bob Breakin. This was a major, major innovation, and now I look at these new Action Man figures that are coming out, and the hands are sort of posed like this, like a Ken doll. They look even worse than the 1960s. I don't know how we've gone so far backwards to a product that is even worse than what came out in the 1960s. And then I should rephrase that, because I don't think what came out in the 1960s was bad at all. I actually think it was amazing. But yeah, to be releasing new Action Man products to kids today and selling a soldier and a pilot and a sailor and giving them an assault rifle that they can't hold, it's a terrible product. I don't want to buy it. I won't buy it for my kids, and I'm not invested in it. So the one Action Man figure or vehicle that was never made that I would love to see made, this is an easy answer for me, and that is the Long Range Desert Group Jeep, the Desert Jeep. This was actually, Palitoy did make a prototype of this, and it actually features in Ian Harrison's The Official Dossier, The History of Action Man book. But also my good friend Vaughan Millard, who is a really, really famous UK-based Action Man toy customizer. He took this picture from the book. He took an Action Man armoured Jeep from sort of the Eagle Eye period, and he turned it into a Long Range Desert Group Jeep. I think this is absolutely fantastic, and if I ever get hold of another one of these Jeeps, I'm going to do this customization myself. Do I have any photos of myself and Action Man when I was a kid? So I've got quite a few photos of myself when I was young with toys. One of my favourites is myself with Castle Grayskull, and that photo has actually appeared in a couple of my videos. But when it comes to Action Man, I've actually got more childhood photos of my brother, because Action Man really wasn't my era. I actually sort of grew up more in the Star Wars era. But the Action Man I played with were the hand-me-downs from my older brother, who was 6 years older. So I've got two really nice photographs of my brother playing with vintage Action Man. One is a classic Action Man with the Sabotage set, and the other one is with a Shirley Jeep and trailer. I do, however, have one photo of myself with Action Man when I was a kid, probably when I shouldn't really have been playing with Action Man anymore. I reckon I was around 11 or 12 years old, and as much as I hid it from my friends, I was still interested in toys, and I was still sort of actively playing with Action Man. My family had recently emigrated from the United Kingdom to Australia. And at the time, I had kind of an obsession with Vietnam War films. So Platoon, Full Metal Jacket, Hamburger Hill, those were the films that I really enjoyed watching in that period of my life. So we moved to Australia, we moved to a new house, and I think the address was Beckton Court. I think it was Beckton Court in Kingsley, in Western Australia. And I went down the side of my house, where it was all sort of, we had this small sort of alleyway down the side of the house. It was really nice and sandy. I dug a load of foxholes and tried to sort of recreate like a Vietnamese prisoner of war camp, where Action Man was going to break out of the prison, with an M60 and M16 and all those kind of traditional Vietnam War era weapons. So yeah, I've got one photo, and I'm glad you enjoy it. Dave, you've given me the hardest question of all. So my good friend Dave from Toy Polloi has asked me, excuse me, I'm just reading off my laptop here. If you could only keep one toy from your collection, what would it be? Oh my God, Dave, if I could only keep 50 of them, it would be a hard choice, but you're asking me to pick one. So probably the one I'm going to pick is Christmas 1984, 1985. My grandmother, who I love dearly, she gave me a boxed Eagle Eye Action Man Talking Commander in the big window box. I absolutely love that, and it's probably the one piece of Action Man packaging and one piece of Action Man packaging artwork that I really remember very, very vividly from my childhood. Now, The figures, not particularly that rare at all. You can pick them up fairly easily, but I know I hunted for many, many years to find a mint boxed example. I got one several years ago. I'm very, very proud to display that within my collection. So probably if that was the only toy I could ever keep, it would be that one. Just because it elicits so many, you know, fond memories of my grandmother giving me this toy that I absolutely adored back in 1984, 85, whenever it was. So yeah, my boxed Action Man talking commander with the eagle eyes. Thanks for your question, Brett. Am I collecting the new MEGO action figures? So I don't really collect any new toys whatsoever. I'll pick up the odd one, maybe if I'm curious about what a new line kind of looks like. So although I'm, you know, I wouldn't say a massive MEGO collector, you know, but I'm into MEGO. I've got quite a few of them, particularly the world's greatest superheroes. But I don't particularly ever go out and collect any modern toys. I'd rather save my money and hunt down the original vintage toys that I'm looking for. Having said that, I am planning on filming a video review of the MEGO Star Trek line. Now, I've got all of the core characters, all of the core Enterprise Starfleet characters. I have the MEGO, Enterprise playset. What I don't have are many of the aliens. I think I've got the Chitauri, that's Marvel. What am I talking about? I've got one of the aliens, but not many of them, and I know they're very, very sought after, extremely expensive to collect. So, and probably my favorite is the Romulan. So I'm actually glad you asked this question, because this is one of the first modern toys I've bought in quite some time. I'm getting ready to film this video, so I thought I would go out and purchase the new MEGO version of the Romulan. I think it's a fantastic toy. It's a really, really good recreation of the original product. The skin color is a lot lighter. Probably more realistic, but I kind of like it because it's very easy to identify as not the original, you know, because the plastic color used for the flesh tone of the face and the hands is very easily identifiable as not the original. So no, I don't collect new MEGO figures, but I have purchased one just to kind of satisfy my curiosity with what the product is that they're bringing out today. So would I like to see a 6-inch reboot of G.I. Joe's A Real American Hero toy line? Hell yes. I was walking through a toy aisle in my local Kmart recently, and it's a pretty small toy aisle. I don't have many, there are no toy stores in the town where I live. The only sort of kind of place to get toys is in the local Kmart. So I was walking through that toy aisle very, very recently, and what struck me was Hasbro's Marvel Classics line. I've been aware of them for some time, but they don't normally pop up in my local Kmart. And I saw them and I was like, you know, these are actually the best kind of classic styled action figures in the line. This is the kind of thing that would have drawn my attention as a child walking through a toy aisle, with these sort of 6-inch Marvel Classics. And similarly, probably the Star Wars 6-inch Black Series. So would I like to see G.I. Joe? I actually think the G.I. Joe line translated into that sort of 6-inch kind of Star Wars Black Series style format. I think that actually would be way more successful than the Star Wars Black Series line. Just, you know, the G.I. Joe characters are so iconic, they're so colourful, they're so diverse, and I think the brand would really lend itself to be, it's already started as a 12-inch line back in the 60s and through the Adventure Team period of the 1970s. It then died away, and then it's very, very successfully reinvented itself as a 3 3/4-inch figure line, which was, you know, the sort of the standard scale for action figures in the 1980s. So having, you know, already been a 12-inch line, then been a 3 3/4-inch line, having great success in both lines, and with today's real popularity being, I think that's probably the most popular scale for modern toys is the 6-inch range. I definitely recommend that Hasbro should have a crack at bringing out G.I. Joe in that scale. That is actually I'm going to renege on what I said before about not collecting modern toys. If they brought G.I. Joe out in a 12-inch series, in a 6-inch series now, I will collect them. That will be the one modern toy line that I would collect. I would love to have a 6-inch range of Firefly, Duke, Snake Eyes, Destro, Cobra Commander, the Cobra Trooper, Bazooka, Alpine. Oh, now I'm getting really excited. That would be fantastic. So yes, I would love to see a 6-inch range of Hasbro's G.I. Joe A Real American Hero. My favourite Action Man commercial. Well, when I was writing, researching, filming, editing my documentary feature film, The Story of Action Man, that was a 2-year period of my life. The best 2 years of my life, I must admit. It was a passion project, and I really, really enjoyed that period of my life. But during that time, I poured over every single Action Man commercial that I could ever find on YouTube, through other collectors, and a lot of them appear in the documentary. So I don't know if I really had a favourite one then. It's kind of hard to say. But for right now, my favourite one is the one that I never found during that time. I actually found one maybe a year ago on YouTube. It was like kind of like a lost Action Man commercial from my era, the Eagle Eye era. It had the Action Man parachute regiment. It had the assault copter with the firing rockets, which was the first helicopter I had when I was a child. I think it's a fantastic commercial, and let the commercial speak for itself. Play it now.
This is today's Action Man, watching the armored jeep getting ready for action. Talking commander gives his orders.
Give me some cover.
The assault copter fires off its rockets in support, right on target. But is the battle over? Only you know. You and Action Man.
Okay, my next two questions come from probably my most favourite Analog Toys supporters. I love all of you guys. Anyone who watches a video, writes a comment, clicks subscribe, hits like. I really, really appreciate every one of you taking a little bit of time out of your day to watch the content that we produce here at Analog Toys. But I do have two in particular supporters and fans of the channel who are kind of, they've got a special place in my heart. I love these two young boys from Kent County in England, Arthur and Rufus. And you may see in a video late last year when I did a big shout out to them, and I actually sent them a couple of DVD copies of my Story of Action Man documentary, which they received on Christmas morning. Do I still play with Action Man? Well, Arthur, I am 41 years old, and society kind of says when you get to my age, you shouldn't really play with toys, but I kind of do. I love to display them, I love to pose them, so maybe my playing patterns have changed since when I was a child, but I still consider it play, and it brings me a lot of joy. It makes me very, very happy, and probably the number one thing I look forward to on the weekend is getting to take an Action Man off the shelf and change his position and make him hold his rifle slightly differently and repose him, and just make the whole toy look different. So yeah, Arthur, I do still play with my toys. What is my favourite Action Man outfit? Now, I have a lot of favourites. I grew up in the Eagle Eye era. However, I am very, very fond of the painted hair era, fully loaded combat soldier. But I've got to say, my personal favourite is the SAS key figure, which is the black sort of counter-terrorist SAS guy that you see right here. When this was released in 1980, 81, this sort of took Action Man from being like a World War II hero and an adventure hero and turned him into a modern military guy. And like, it just couldn't be cooler with his all black outfit with just, the accents of a yellow rope and a grey flash hood. It was just super cool. It was like the cross between, the heavily armed Action Man of World War II and James Bond, and that happy marriage of the two, creating just an awesome toy. And actually the whole line, if you're able to collect the whole line, and you've got the SAS parachute attack, underwater attack, secret mission, the helicopter, the dinghy. What a fantastic line of toys. I absolutely love them. So yeah, Rufus. My favourite Action Man is the SAS key figure. Did I like the Big Jim toy line from Mattel? Well, growing up, I had absolutely no idea that Big Jim even existed, and in fact, it wasn't until many years later when I was a young adult, really starting to get into toy collecting quite seriously, and I met a very good friend of mine in Perth, in Western Australia, called Dyl Klöepfer. Now, Dyl Klöepfer's got one of the best vintage Barbie collections probably in the Southern Hemisphere. And when I talk vintage, like classic, late 50s, early 60s, mint box carded, great collection of Barbie. We sort of bonded because he was very interested in Action Man and the original G.I. Joe. Became very good, and it's become a lifelong friendship for me. And yeah, I was not aware of Big Jim until much later in life when my friend Neil started collecting them. And I can really certainly appreciate the early ones. I like all the Olympic sporting hero, sort of Big Jim, Big Josh, Big Jack. Yeah, I think they're great toys. I will probably never collect them because I just don't have that connection to my childhood because I never had them. But I certainly understand, it's a quality product, and I can really appreciate why people want to collect Big Jim toys. Are there any differences between the Action Man ROM Space Knight and the Parker Brothers ROM Space Knight? I'm going to be 100% honest here and say that I have absolutely no idea. I've been collecting Action Man, well, pretty much all my life, but I seriously started collecting Action Man in around 1993, 94. So that's going on for a good 20. I can't even do the math. I don't know how. I've been collecting for several decades. I've amassed a very big collection. At one stage, it was bigger than what I've got now. It's kind of reduced a little bit. But the ROM Space Knight toy is one toy that I've always wanted, but actually I've never owned. Neither the Parker Brothers one or the Action Man Palitoy one. So, I've seen pictures online, I've seen pictures in catalogs, I've seen them in collections, but it's not until you really own one in your own collection and you actually, get to handle it yourself and pose it and put it on a shelf that you really get to understand the intricacies of a toy. So was the Action Man parachute designed to work? Yes, it was. 100% it was designed to work. A couple of people have proven this over the years. So James May from the famous sort of British TV show Top Gear. I can't remember what the TV series was, but there's quite a there's a famous segment where he actually throws an Action Man Red Devil out of a helicopter and you see the parachute deploy. But rather than watching that, I would highly recommend you see the very recent video from my good friend Dave at Toy Polloi, where he was able to sort of get out into a nice English field and practice throwing the Red Devil parachuters up into the air, and it worked very well. So I'll leave a link in the description below for his video and check it out. I highly recommend it. If Action Man could face off with any villain from any property, who is my ideal or perfect choice, factoring that villain also gets a 12-inch scale figure in the vintage style? I'm going to have to go with one of the Indiana Jones villains here. I've often remarked in some of my videos, Indiana Jones videos, that I really wish that Palitoy had taken on the Indiana Jones license and just brought him out in the Action Man line, because when you look at the wealth of World War II sort of German uniforms and vehicles and accessory sets that Palitoy made for Action Man, that just would you just could have made one Indiana Jones figure and then boom, you've got the whole lineup. But certainly, if I had to pick one in particular, it's probably going to be the German officer from The Last Crusade, particularly in the desert scene with the tank where Indiana Jones is trying to rescue his father from the tank. I think that's a great scene. I think the officer's got a beautiful uniform, and that would perfectly translate into the Action Man line. Do I have any thoughts on the current state of the toy industry? Not really, no. I don't want to be dismissive of your question, JoeFan82. I love your channel. I really don't keep up with modern toys that much. As I said, I occasionally browse in the toy aisle at Kmart, but I live in kind of a remote town. We don't get a lot of toys there. I just don't have any interest in it. I don't think. So my son's 12 years old, turning 13 this year. His generation, he's never been interested in action figures ever. He's been into iPads since he was 5 years old. He wants to acquire, he saves his pocket money and then asks me if he can spend his pocket money on my iTunes account to buy a new skin for his avatar on Fortnite. And I think it's a real shame. Like, I understand how generations change and our interests change, but he's going to feel nostalgic for things like his Fortnite avatar when he's older, and there's going to be no way that he can recreate that other than by, he'll probably end up, by the time he's older, a PlayStation 4 will be an antique, and maybe that's what he'll collect, and he'll go back in and but I believe that those avatars, it's all played in an online game, and I don't know if he'll be able to, if his avatar will be able to wear the same outfit and carry the same weapons and equipment as what they do today. So I think it's a real shame. That's where he wants his money to go. Whereas when I was a child and there was a toy that I really, really wanted, you purchased that toy and it was a genuine tactile material item that you could keep and potentially in years to come pass on to your children. So I probably digressed a little bit. What do I think of the current state of the toy industry? I'm kind of indifferent about it. I don't. My passion is for vintage toys. I don't concern myself too much. I don't collect anything modern. Not really interested in anything modern that's coming out. I'm more interested in seeing, when big collections go up for sale at auctions, where a big Action Man collector's offered up a large collection, or there's been a find at a former Palitoy salesman's house. That's the kind of stuff that piques my interest, and I spend my time reading up on that kind of thing. I don't really read up or spend much time on the internet looking at new toys. So. Sorry. Okay, the final question. What is your favorite Action Man set that you always wished to have but didn't get? Very, very simple answer. The Action Man Electronic Command Center. And the reason that's easy for me to answer is because I always wanted it as a kid. I wanted it so much because I saw it in an Action Man catalog or poster. I don't know whether my parents, they couldn't afford it, but also, they might not have been able to find it either. But my grandfather was, quite a well-skilled carpenter. He ended up making me something similar out of wood. So basically like a wooden pillbox for my Action Man figures to use. But it was never quite the same thing. It wasn't the one that, that I saw in the catalogue, that had the heavy machine gun and the cannon mounted on the front, the communication center. And the reason that really, really sticks out is not only did I not have it as a kid, I still don't have it today. And it's probably the #1 Action Man toy that I've never owned, never even seen that close up in another person's collection. It's not exceedingly rare. I don't think there are that many. Excuse me, my phone just went off. I don't think there are that many in Australia. They do come up for sale in the United Kingdom, but unfortunately with international postage these days, I could end up spending more on postage than I could on the actual toy itself. But when the right one turns up, I will eventually purchase the Action Man Electronic Command Center and get it into my collection. So that's it for today's Q&A video. I'd like to thank every single one of you who sent me your questions. It's been really, really fun for me, reading your questions, seeing what you're interested in me answering. And I've really, really enjoyed filming this video. So just a quick update for the channel coming very, very soon. I've almost finished editing our latest top 10 comic book, vintage comic book toy video. That'll be coming soon. I'm not going to reveal the subject, which comic book character's in that, but that video is coming soon. Then next is going to be our Origins of MEGO Star Trek. So it's going to be a MEGO Star Trek action figure review. And then from there, there's a whole number of projects coming up. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.